We'll reconvene the District 99 Board of Education. We've been in closed session. The roll has been taken. A quorum has been established. At this point, we rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, what we have tonight is a board workshop, 4 items. The first item is summer school report. Dr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. White. The administration makes a report to the board each year about summer school. Part of the report is a recap about the summer school from the previous summer. The other part of the report is recommendations for the upcoming summer. I'd like to introduce Dr. Judy Miner and Mr. Tim Tilton, Dean of North, who is also a summer school administrator, who are going to make these reports for us.
And I'll ask Dean Tilton if he could present the findings from this last summer.
Sure. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm happy to once again report we had a successful summer school program in 2011. I'd like to highlight the best bullet points of the program here. Last year, summer school was held at the North Campus. Our academics program consisted of 17 different subjects that were represented throughout the 6-week summer school. 6 weeks were split into 2 3-week semesters. Class ran from 8 in the morning until 12:45 in the afternoon. We had 389 students that participated in summer school. Last year we had 2 new subjects. They happen to be math subjects that were identified as a need from last year's credit recovery online program. We were able to make 2 actual full 6-week classes out of Advanced Algebra Trig as well as Geometry 200. We also had for the first time a Spanish Bridge program that bridged students that were struggling in Spanish 1 that wanted to prepare and be ready for Spanish 2. That ran for 6 weeks, for 2 hours a day. Our driver's education program had 57 students that participated. This year we were able to administer the state behind the wheel waiver test for the first time within the program, rather than having to do it outside afterwards for 12 of the qualifying students. And then again, we had another good year with the online credit recovery program, utilizing E2020 program. We tried to be a little more flexible for students' schedules. We had 2 different sessions this time, 2.5 hours in the morning and then another session 2.5 hours in the afternoon. And 37 students participated in that and earned credit for 45 individual classes in that program. So once again, it was a great combined effort for just about every department throughout the district. And in a moment, Dr. Judy Miner will summarize the recommendations, but if you'd like, I can answer any questions.
Any questions?
I have one. I think I've asked this before, but refresh my memory. The driver's ed participation is down from what it used to be in the summers. Do we have an idea of why that is?
Well, for the last 3 years that I've been summer school director, we've had a program, and I believe for a few years before that, we've had a program that was maximum of 60 students, capability of 60 students. So before that, I understand that we had, somewhere in the 70s, 80s, hundreds of students. And I guess I lack the historical knowledge on that as to why the programs have shrunk over the decade.
Just curious.
Yeah. I can find that out for you and get back to you.
Don't spend a lot of time on it, but I am curious about
Sure.
it.
All right.
Thank you. In terms of recommendations going forward for the upcoming year, we would recommend that we continue to use Title I funds to cover the cost of tuition for the freshman summer bridge courses as well as the Back on Track algebra program. The purpose of Title I is to support at-risk students, and we find that these 2 programs directly speak to those particular needs. The second piece we would recommend is to continue to grant tuition and fee waivers for those students who do qualify for tuition and fee waivers during the regular school year. Again, these are students on free and reduced lunches. Again, it allows them access to the programs, and a recommendation would be to note that these costs will be supplemented by the Title I funds. So we would anticipate a balanced budget for 2012 going forward. Additionally, we would recommend that the semester tuition rate would remain the same as we had for this year, which was $195 for in-district residents and $390 for non-district residents. Additionally, we would recommend that the teaching stipend be increased by about 3.2%. The last time there was an increase was back in 2009, so this would be about 1% per year. And in doing a review of surrounding districts, this would keep us on par to continue to access and get the very best teachers that we can for summer school to help the kids who really are in the biggest need, because much of our summer school program is accessed by those students who do need to make up credits and stay on track with their graduation piece. Additionally, we would recommend that we use Title I to support costs for transportation. The last time this was done was back in 2009, looking at our Title I allocation and using those numbers. That would have accounted for about 38% of the students who had attended. So with little more than a third of the students taking access of transportation, it can be something supported by Title I. That is something we would recommend to support the students. And finally, we give a recommendation of the following calendar dates. For first semester of summer school, Monday, June 11th through Thursday, June 28th, with second semester then beginning Monday, July 2nd, ending Friday, July 22nd, with the 4th of July being a non-attendance day, and each term would be 14 days in length.
Any questions?
I have a couple. If we're going to increase the stipend rates but keep the tuition rates the same, how is that? How do we pay for that that increase in cost?
In the past, well, what we were looking to do is the students that were free and reduced, those costs would be supplemented by Title I funds. In the past, that had not been done, so that would result in a zero balance.
Okay. And then you made a statement in the report about we anticipate by offering bus transportation at no charge to students, those students who were unable to enroll in summer school because of a lack of transportation will now be able to take advantage of this academic opportunity. How many students do you think that we're talking about there?
I know previously there was a survey that had been shared last year, and the numbers were small in terms of people who noted that transportation was an issue, but again, that was based upon the students who actually attended summer school. In going back to 2009 and seeing that 38% of the students had responded, had the ability to access transportation, and given the fact that we do have funding through Title I that could support this effort, we figured that this would be a good opportunity. Again, we'll gather data subsequent to this year and see was that a good choice to make. But that is one of the purposes for which Title I funds is intended, to bring at-risk students to have the educational opportunities in a summer school scenario.
And also, I would say several years ago, we were providing bus transportation to summer school for students. And if you look at the figures in Mr. Tilton's report, if you go back 3 or 4 years, our summer school enrollment was more than 100 students higher. And we eliminated the transportation when we were reducing as a cost reduction 2 or 3 years ago. We were making budget cuts to accommodate what we expected to be a $2 million shortfall in our state aid. And that was one of the things that we reduced. And as an unfortunate consequence, we saw a reduction in summer school enrollment that has never come back. So we are hoping that by providing transportation, that we get more kids to go to summer school and get courses they need to take so they stay on target for graduation.
Excellent.
I do appreciate Dr. Miner's work and also Mr. Whitehead's in trying to find more creative uses for Title I money. This is a way to spend that money we have not used in the past. And one of the difficulties we've had in this district in terms of Title I money, in fact, one of the reasons we stopped receiving it for a while was we couldn't find a legitimate way to spend a lot of it. So we ended up giving it back because because we're not what's called a full Title I district. We don't have a high enough percentage of low-income students to qualify, so we can only use that money on certain programs, and we ended up sending a large portion of it back. By using the money in this way, we believe we are effectively using it, offsetting district costs, because in the past we would have taken a loss at summer school. And I just want to acknowledge that Judy and Evan's work in finding a creative solution that will benefit everyone, hopefully.
Excellent.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Anybody? Ready? Okay. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move forward with the approval of the recommendation.
Correct.
Is there any discussion regarding the approval of the recommendation that we just heard before we ask for a motion? Okay, the chair would invite a motion.
So moved. That
So
we
the-
accept the recommendation?
Okay. The motion by Member Beckman is to approve the 2012 summer school recommendation as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Pavasich seconds. Call the vote, please.
Julie Beckman,
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Deb Boyle,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka,
Aye.
Susan Kuhn,
Aye.
Bill Webb.
Aye, that motion carries. The summer school recommendations have been approved. The next item on our agenda is the report on the progress on district goals. Dr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. White. Is part and parcel to a agreement the board made back in 2009 that we would establish district goals, and there would be a quarterly review of the district goals by the administration that would culminate in the July State of the District report about the district's work on its goals during the year. This is frankly the second quarterly report, but since the board only approved the goals in December, it's a relatively brief time frame in this report. All the board members have received the report in writing, and I know that you're intent on looking at over the weekend with the hope that we would not go through the report line by line. Since it's 11 or 12 pages long, or 9 pages long, that would probably be a long report and not very interesting. However, we have looked at the report and decided to pick out several things to highlight, and so we're going to try to do that very briefly for you. We are not going to go through every item, but we are going to report on several of these items tonight that we have been working on. The first one would be Goal 1.1A, consistent implementation of Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports at each building. Dr. Miner. Excuse me, Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you. As Dr. Miner and myself spoke to the board early on this school year, we discussed what we are calling our system of support, which are interventions for students at the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 levels that go hand in hand with our RTI plan that we submitted to the state. The first a piece of that plan was to make sure that we were looking at the interventions that we currently offer within the district and the frequency of those interventions being implemented to our students. So I'm happy to report some preliminary findings. Since November 1st, we started using our Teacher Access Center here in the district that allows teachers to track our interventions and also for other teachers to see what interventions have been put in place. District-wide, we've had over 8,000 interventions implemented for students here in District 99, which is a great accomplishment in a very small period and short period of time as well. That being said, as we look to our Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports. This allows us to figure out what type of interventions we need for other students, and also we'll be able to measure some of the success that we've had with those interventions as we look at DNF rates in the future.
Dr. Miner will talk about 1.3A which regards the Read 180 program.
The Read 180 program had initially been implemented last year, and again was supported by Title I funds to help those students who were at risk. Currently, we had received a report in terms of how students had done since the beginning of this year. I will give you more detailed information at the next board meeting in the It's About Student Learning report, but one of the things that was amazing to me in the short amount of time, and we're talking maybe about 8 to 9 weeks, just at the start of this year to when the report, the data had been gathered, there were some students who had already 2 years of growth in reading alone. The one, I think there was a top 20 they had listed in terms of students, and the high flyer had about 3.6 years of growth in that very short time. So I'll have a lot more to talk to you about with regard to the Read 180 program, but it seems to be making a difference in students' abilities to read better.
I'd like to brief the board about Goal 1.4A, develop curriculum assessment instruction outcomes that target the needs for the 21st century learner via the Common Core integration. And specifically, just a few words on the Common Core curriculum. And I know we have given the board some brief information about the Common Core curriculum, and I believe the board will learn a lot about this curriculum over the next couple of years. But essentially, it is a rigorous curriculum that is intended to be available to all students. And in the case of mathematics, which is sort of the first curriculum to make the change to Common Core, it is essentially a year ahead of the current regular college prep curriculum in mathematics, which means all of that will move down to the elementary middle level. And we know from discussions with our associated districts that they are also working on this curriculum. In addition to being rigorous, the curriculum focuses on not just skill development in mathematics, manipulating problems, but also deep understanding and application of mathematics. And so it is said on one hand to be a narrower curriculum, but also a deeper curriculum. The district is, in mathematics, intending to introduce 3 new courses in a row, which will begin in 2013-14 and go through 2015-16. And they will replace essentially what we now call algebra, geometry, and college algebra. I don't know what the names of those courses are going to be. However, they will be an integration, in fact, of algebra, geometry, and college algebra, again, at a higher level, which is going to be a challenge, because one of the intents of this is there isn't going to be a lower level curriculum for the kids who need to go slower. We're going to have to find a way to get all of our students, or virtually all of them, to be able to perform in this curriculum, which is the point, but that's also the challenge. So the board can expect to see in the coming years new course proposals, staffing requests, and recommendations for new materials. And as we have the most knowledge right now about mathematics, shortly behind is going to be a Common Core curriculum in language arts. Dr. Miner, 1.4B.
Speaking of curriculum, a major initiative relates to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We're in the process of investigating various models with regard to STEM, as well as using that to inform how we define what STEM means for District 99. On Friday, a cohort of teachers and myself and department chairs had gone to a STEM summit at Oak Park River Forest High School. There was some incredibly exciting news as to the rollout of career and technical education initiatives that the state is putting forth. They're looking at a Common Core for CTE as well, so there's another area of commonality. They also talked about a new directions program that the state will be unveiling this week for programs of study. And so that is something that we will debrief on and have lots more to share with you in the upcoming months and years in terms of having a better definition of what does STEM mean for District 99.
That's exciting.
Rod, area 3.1 in technology.
Sure, thanks, Mark. Well, the wireless network is in place. We're using it now. It's being used in the schools, functioning very well. The mobile computer pilot is underway. About a week ago exactly, about 60 teachers happily came in early in the morning and late after school to receive their tablets, and just even in less than a week's time, just some of the feedback has been really, really great. I'd just like to publicly acknowledge the technology support staff has just done phenomenal work getting ready for this, getting the wireless network in place, and while maintaining everything else too. In that week ago session, the recipients of the tablets went through about an hour training program, just very brief, acclimate themselves to the tablets. After the pilot, we'll go ahead and fine-tune what training we'll provide to the rest of the staff. Also, the pilot's going to provide us fantastic feedback for what supports we have to have in place and just how we need to move forward as we release these devices to the whole staff. I think we may have talked with you before about what we learned from the other districts that we visited, and through our own discussions, that our intent is to distribute the rest of the computers to the rest of the staff before school is over, so this spring, giving enough time for the pilot to learn what we need to learn from that, but to give the rest of the staff the benefit of having those devices for themselves over the summer, so that they'll be able to really acclimate themselves to them and hit the ground running much more steadily and much faster when the school year starts in the fall, giving us a little bit of time to put together more training materials and such.
That's great.
Thank you, Rod.
Sure.
Dr. Smith, we'll talk about 4.1A and 4.1B.
Well, 4.1A is related to our diversity recruiting, and the committee has met. We have a meeting coming up on February 14th and another one on March 13th. Started out by reviewing some work that was done through the DuPage ROE on diversity recruiting, student achievement. We had some District 99 staff members that were on the original DuPage committee, as was Mr. Whitehead. So we've also, Evan and I have also had the opportunity to go out and meet with some local universities that have students from more of a diverse background to talk more about the programs and our interests. What we found out was that we're also competing with other districts. Glen Bard was mentioned, and Glenbrook was out there, and Stevenson and Niles. So it sounds like there were, the thinking here is aligned to other districts. So we've reviewed some work by other districts, and we will be defining more clear-cut strategies for our DCs and our administrators to use as they review applications, meet with candidates, and start to think about what this will look like for District 99. So as far as having a plan in place for 2012, it's really more 2012-13, because we'll take this year to learn more about what's worked in other districts. Mr. Whitehead and myself will continue to work with the committee and work with other districts and universities to find out a little bit more about how we can go about minority recruitment and support, and learn from some of our surrounding districts as well. 4.1B, the teacher mentoring program. We've talked a little bit. The district has been recognized in the past for the teacher mentoring program that we have. It's been historically a 2-year program. But it's time now to audit our program and look at our program against, ISB has their own continuum that was developed to take a look at your mentoring programs and the professional development that you're not only providing to your proteges to help them transition, but your mentors to help them transition. So Dr. Miner has taken a lead on this and has some experiences with mentoring in her former position as well. Has already brought a consultant in that we've both worked with before to help with the audit. And he'll be working with the committee, with the core mentoring committee, and then a number of District 99 reps will be going down to Springfield for some additional training on the continuum. We'll finish the audit and have phase 1 in place for some training in May of 12, and then use next year to get ready for that second year mentoring program. The first year program for that new teacher meets a certain level of needs, and then year 2 their needs are a little bit different, so both the protege and the mentor needs. So we're on our way to redefining and kind of revamping the 2-year program.
All right. Back to Dr. Miner. Goal 5.1B. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Not Dr. Miner, Mrs. Browning. Communications.
Thank you. Just moving on to providing relevant, timely, and transparent information to the community, which is what my mission is in the department anyway, but just some specifics of what we've been working on are the monthly newsletter. So we have 5 issues so far that we publish monthly at the beginning of each month. Send that out to our full 7,000 distribution list, and about half of those people open it up, and I don't know if they read it or not, but it's being sent out. And we also put that on our website too under the publications tab. Let's see, we also just print out a small quantity and put them at the schools and the lobbies. So we find that people do enjoy looking at them at the school. So just not many printed copies, but some. You know, we have the standard superintendent's letter. We have Board of Education highlights as part of regular features, and then just starting to put more feature type articles in there. This month we focused on the Scholastic Bowl students, just to give people a little more in-depth flavor of what's going on at the schools. Last month we highlighted the flipped classroom, and CBS came in last week and featured the math teacher Brian Gervais at North, so that was pretty exciting. Not that that was a result of that, but just more flipping discussion, so that was exciting. We are also, as you know, videotaping the board meetings. We have 4 up there right now. This will be the 5th one that'll go up tonight. The number of views have steadily decreased. We went from 173 was the first one to 121 to 95 to 63. So, but 63 is still a fairly large number, more than in the audience today. So we'll continue to monitor that and to see how that is, how people feel about the videos. We also continue to use Facebook and Twitter and looking to grow those numbers. We have 57 followers on Twitter right now, 25 on Facebook. But when you get to the schools, that's what people really identify with more. So we have 477 at North. South has just 105, but they make full use of their student activities and athletics, and they have 281. So that's just a brief update on those tools. Interesting. And then finally, just my regular media relations, trying to grow positive relationships with the reporters, local reporters, and responding to them in a timely manner with factual information, just to continue those good relationships. So that's just a rundown of that strategic goal.
Okay, Evan, goal 7.2A.
Thank you. As we continue to look at our counseling and student support services and our service delivery model, we also want to look at our social emotional learning in a way that is integrated throughout the curriculum. That being said, there is a direct correlation between social emotional learning, our PBIS behavioral strategies, and also as we will briefly be looking at the ASCA, the American School Counselor Association ramp model, and the way that we deliver services here in the district through our counseling and student support. Thus far, we've met with both buildings and both departments. I've actually done a lot of work already before we had a chance to meet with them, and we're definitely moving in the right direction to look at what we currently offer, and what we'll be looking to offer in the future as well. I'm really excited about this piece because it'll really give us an opportunity to look at our interventions on the behavioral side of our systems of support.
And now, Dr. Minor, our last mini report on Goal 7.3C.
7.3C relates to systematizing our data gathering, data analysis for decision making. We've tapped Evan, myself, the associate principals for curriculum and instruction, as well as those people there's one in each building, as well as my assistant here at the ASC, who are the virtual data gurus, pulling together, looking at the types of reports that have been done historically with regard to data, as well as going forward. The state has made a lot of changes in terms of what it's requiring for the student information system. So we want to make sure we're up to date and on the cutting edge for that. We've already met twice, and then we've also arranged for an electronic means by which the three data gurus can communicate to gather their collection of reports. We're now ready to bring in Rod and his expertise within technology so that we can see how we can craft standardized forms within our eSchool mainframe so that we're able to provide statistical analysis in a consistent means. For the snapshot and time reports, those are kind of the running reports during the year. Our next piece is to define what the parameters are, because in defining what certain data sets mean might change the types of data and the kinds of analyses that are made. So we want to make sure we're all clear when it comes to defining what certain codes mean, that we are all in agreement, whether it's from a building perspective or the district perspective, and certainly in terms of the state and national perspective. So as we move along, we're now at the point now that we have our strategic plan goals. We want to go through this and make sure that our data reports follow every single one of these measurements, so we can also provide you with those timely reports that you'll be anticipating from us in July or further on. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. White, does the board have any questions about the written report or the oral report as presented?
Any questions from anybody?
Very good, very comprehensive, very good.
Okay. Thank you. We move on now. Item 4D, report on the North High Master Site Plan.
Thank you, Mr. White. As the board is aware, there's quite a lot going on with the Master Site Plan at North, and we have been engaged in a discussion now for a couple months about the location of the parking lot on the west side of campus. Tonight we are not going to discuss that. But we have other things to discuss with regard to the total project. The first issue is the east side parking lot, or the parking lot on the east side of Main Street, and I'll have Mr. Schock review that. The second is just to give you an update on the issue of water detention. As you know, there's a question out there right now about whether we need to do water detention on the west side project, or whether we do not need to do water detention. There is an issue with the county ordinance that may or may not be passed. There is an issue in terms of how the county ordinance may or may not be interpreted. And so in terms of our efforts to get a response to that, we are attending a meeting on Thursday afternoon with representatives of the DuPage County who work with stormwater. I understand also with representatives of the village of Downers Grove, although the county was going to invite them. And then Mr. Schock and I, Mr. Davenport will go as a representative of the board. and I think Chuck Hiscock will also attend from North. So until we have that meeting, probably not much to report. And hopefully after the meeting, we'll know a lot more. I'll let Marty talk about the east side parking lot, and then we'll come back to the final issue as what we do with the west side parking lot, assuming, or in the contingency that we would have to do the stormwater detention.
The east parking lot, as you know from the concept plan, we are removing the practice field that's over there and expanding that parking lot to encompass the entire parcel of land. And in conversation with the village and neighbors concerned about how traffic would flow. And so our initial plan will be, or is under revision to meet all of the requirements that the village is asking us to make in order to keep the impacts as low as possible to the neighbors. It's a challenge. We will lose some parking stalls, the capacity. We'll still be expanding our total parking stall count throughout the campus, but not quite as large as we had hoped. And the driveway locations are being discussed, and we're looking at some options there. And of course, as with the entire campus, we're looking at some significant improvements or changes in the landscaping that will take place over on that side. So we're probably another couple of weeks away from finishing those details because of the changes that we're encompassing. Not enough to impact our construction program, we hope, and unlikely to change much in the way of cost. It's just going to look different than what our concept plan had suggested it would look like.
Any questions about that? Okay.
Well, the third, I'll start out, Marty, and I'll let you, Byron's here, you can contribute as well. In our discussions over the past week and a half with regard to what we would do if we do have to do the stormwater detention, or if the decision about whether or not we do it is pushed way out down the road to the point where we don't know when it's going to be made or an interpretation is going to be made, what our options might be. One of the ideas that has come forward is that perhaps we reconsider or consider, because we have considered this earlier, and that is in some place in the master site plan for North, installing an artificial surface on that west field that was going to be a soccer field, instead of having it a regular or natural turf field. And at first blush, that's a very expensive option. However, when we consider the reality of having to do the water detention, assuming that's a possibility or a strong possibility, and then considering some of the other things that we would forego in a natural surface, like irrigation, stormwater harvest, rainwater harvesting, and some of the other ideas that we had with regard to the campus, some of the work that we had considered doing at Herrick, including a softball field and some other changes on that campus that we've talked with District 58 about. If we don't do those things because we can achieve what we wanted to with an artificial surface, then it looks like a different cost. So I asked Marty, and Byron can discuss this as well, to talk about that concept and talk about the cost issues, because I think they have worked on that.
We have, and we've pushed together some numbers relatively rapidly, so I want to be cautious with the numbers, but I think we can safely say by eliminating some of that work that would go with the grass field, the irrigation system, the rain harvesting system, the seeding, the soil amendments, the excavation, taking that out because it'd be a synthetic field, but with the understanding that there's a cost to the synthetic field, We suspect we're about at a wash, be about the same price.
If we don't do the work at Herrick Middle School.
If we, yes, if we don't do the work at Herrick. And we feel that that's, you know, realistically, that's a good deal for District 99 and for North High School. The synthetic field, as you'll recall when we talked last about it, can give us 3 to 4 times more use than a grass field. You know, because it's always available, weather doesn't affect it, dries up very quickly. Conversation with the athletic director at North High School, we could bring back a number of our athletic programs back on campus. There'd be a reduction in transportation costs and time lost traveling back and forth. And of course, this would be a great practice field for PE. And it would be a combination field. In fact, you might have seen it in the concept plan 2 years ago. It would be laid out as a soccer field, a lower level soccer field, and a lower level softball field combination. So when we look at the balance of costs and what we can eliminate, what we'd have to add because of the detention system, and it's somewhere in a wash area equal, all those benefits that we had looked at before when we included the detention, you know, weren't worth the cost of the detention, but with the detention system as a requirement, it makes all the sense in the world to go with a synthetic field for about the same price as a grass field.
Any questions about this?
Refresh my memory, Marty, on how much we were going to spend at Herrick.
Herrick was about $405,000.
Okay, so that's...
So that would come out. The school would have actually more service out of the synthetic field than they would get out of the Herrick field.
That was my question. Oh.
Yeah.
So even with this possibility, there will be no use at Herrick?
Correct. We would not need Herrick if North High School would not need Herrick if it had the practice field were synthetic. That's how much extra use they get out of a synthetic field over a grass field.
And we can do softball?
Yes.
How do we do that?
My question.
It's all it's lined. Remember,
yeah, but don't we need the dirt?
No, it would be all synthetic, and it'd just be lined. It's pretty common. A number of other school districts in the area have a combination.
They can slide.
This is a lower level.
It's lower level. There would not be a pitcher's mound.
Oh, okay.
Other than that.
It's my understanding that Chicago Circle, UIC plays varsity baseball on a fully synthetic field. The infield's brown synthetic, and the rest of it's green synthetic. Yeah. But it's a totally synthetic field.
They have a portable mound they actually bring in, and there is removable mounds for that. But with it being a softball field, you don't have a mound situation for a softball field, so it's a non-issue.
Yeah. Not this past year, but the year before at the IASB convention, I spoke to the manufacturer of synthetic turf and asked about that, and I said, do they like playing baseball? And I was told, anecdotally, that the players love it, that it's fine. That's not a problem. Which may or may not be true, but that's what I've heard, you know. Completely synthetic.
Very interesting. And then what happens like with a backstop then? You got the soccer, which goes this way. What about?
That's part of designing. I think Marty, what about that? Mrs. Boyle was asking about the backstop.
Yeah, how do you do that?
The backstop, and we need to work out some of these details, but we had toyed with the idea in the concept plan. The backstop would be fixed. But it would be outside of the, correct, it would be outside of the lined soccer field. So it wouldn't interfere with the soccer field at all.
Yeah,
You might have more turf than you would have just for soccer.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a required setback from the infield anyhow, which would more than compensate for what we do for the soccer field. So it's definitely doable. It's just where do we put it on the field and what's the best position?
We're fortunate in that this parcel of property allows us a larger practice soccer field than the stadium does. There's that much more green space, and that's one of the reasons we can put two fields on the same spot.
It's wider.
It's wider, yes.
And there's room enough for portable bleachers.
Portable bleachers, I'm just kidding.
And all that kind of stuff.
I remember.
There is room for portable bleachers out there. We didn't anticipate putting a pad out there for it, but that could be something we could discuss. It's not, you know, but there's room for it.
Well, I know that there are fans.
Oh,
Maybe they'd like to pay for the
Couple of things. For the purposes of, for those who are maybe watching from home, Byron is our representative from White & Company. He's in the audience here.
turn it around.
And then, point of clarity is that we're talking about this in terms of if we're forced to spend the money on the detention, then this might be an alternative that we look to instead of spending the money on the detention. This is a point of clarity. And clearly, when we go to do that, then there's something that we're not going to do in terms of Tier 1, Tier 2 sort of work, or Tier 2 things that we're moving forward to Tier 1. So that's just as a point of clarity.
There's an opportunity cost.
Right.
Yes.
And
Right, but-
I think you said it very well, Mr. Davenport, that if we're forced into the detention, and frankly, from the standpoint of just that project, we are removing impermeable space from that area. We are
Right.
ripping up the road, we are tearing up the houses,
Right.
tearing down the houses. We're taking this larger parking lot, making it a smaller parking lot. So we are creating more or less, a situation where there is less impermeable space. So the stormwater management would be something that, as a result of the code, we have to do, but in terms of how much is it going to help us in that area,
Right.
our thinking is not so much. So this idea came forward, well, if we have to do it,
Right.
how do we maximize the value of that?
Right.
Are you saying that if, let's say we don't have to do the detention, it's still better for us to go with the other plan because we can still provide more of the other things from Tier 2?
Well, if we
Is that
don't
what
have to
you're
do the
saying?
detention, I think that's
It's
another
$500,000,
discussion, but
right.
frankly, it's $500,000. And so this is a different, this is a different idea then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we were going to be spending the $500,000 at Herrick anyway.
Yes, we were.
But the actual cost of doing this field is more like $1 million.
Right. The Herrick, not doing Herrick would balance out the cost of the synthetic field.
See.
It's the $500,000 or $600,000 for the detention that you'd tack onto there. If we have to put it in,
Right.
then take the rest of the work as a balance. If we don't have to build that detention, but we go ahead and decide to put a synthetic field in, then we have to put the detention in. You add that much more money on.
The idea is
One
if
way
we
or
can,
another.
if we have to spend another $500,000, it'd be great if we could actually get something usable for it.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
no,
that's-
I
Right.
understand that. I'd just like to see the numbers.
Right.
One versus the other.
Right.
Because, you know, I think
And-
that would be very interesting to see.
Do we have
And
that in a
really,
projection tonight, Marty?
pardon?
Do we have that in a projection tonight, the numbers?
I do, but
But you don't want to give
well, we
them
put
out.
them together so quickly that I'm always a little bit concerned about it. And until we hear more on the 9th at the county,
Yeah.
it's speculation a little bit. And that's why I was careful to say that there's a balance right now. It might go up a little bit, it might go down a little bit, but right now, the best I would want to project is it's a wash if we're forced to do the detention.
So that means that we're going to put off any permitting process until after the 9th, then? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Or
we
will
need
have
to-
Will we have a definitive answer by then?
That's our intention, is to get a definitive answer so that we can move forward with whichever option. We'll be able to finalize our numbers and move forward with any bid document modifications we might have to do and get out on the street and bid, and still have enough time to get this project started in early spring.
So when's our drop dead date?
Well,
Because you know the government.
this whole process is costing us about 2 weeks, and we probably had 3 or 4 weeks leeway at the most in between there. So drop dead date, is within a week or two to know one way or the other.
Okay.
Now, Marty, just so I'm clear about this, the detention that we're talking about would be the underground vaults like they have,
Well,
That's,
if
and also under the varsity softball field in North.
under the stadiums, we built a stone detention system as opposed to the vault system. Under the fields or parking lots, we'd build a vault system, and there's a difference in price. but it's a location situation, and what's on top of it that makes the difference. In this case, if we were going to, if we are required to put a detention system in the west parcel, it would probably be a stone detention system with a synthetic field. If we decided to stay with grass and still had to put that detention system in, we'd have to go back and think about a vaulted system versus stone. One works better than the other depending what the surface is on top of it.
Okay. Now, my other question, maybe you can clarify this for me, the budgets that we looked at before assumed that we would require a detention system.
Correct.
So if the ordinance is not changed, the existing schedule improvements will remain unchanged because it was already budgeted into what we're planning on spending. It's an opportunity perhaps to save money. Is that?
That's fairly accurate. There's a caveat because it's not just a matter of whether we are required to put the detention basin in, but also part of the ordinance might make us expand the detention under the east field a little bit. And that expansion was not in our concept plan, but the detention on the west field was in our concept plan. So we can cover with our budget the detention system whether or not we put in a synthetic field. We feel, based on the numbers tonight, that we can afford the synthetic field, and we think we can afford those option items that we also talked about a month or two ago. Be tight, but that's a lot of bang for the buck. And part of the reason that we can cover that is because the bids in the Phase 1 came in lower than expected. And there's no reason not to believe that the bids in Phase 2 will come in below our concept plan numbers too. So generally speaking, we think we can pull it all together.
But basically, I guess the point of my question was that in the event we're required to do the detention, we won't be losing any improvements we've been previously discussing.
That's correct.
Because they're already factored into the budget.
Yes.
If we can avoid the detention, then we'll have a significant cost savings, which would allow us
to do more.
Other options.
Right.
Okay. And then we're talking about as a hypothetical change in the current ordinance, which we've been told is under consideration, but that's basically what we're looking for. Is that also accurate?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, just to follow up with that a little bit, to be, once again, clarity, what we're talking about is whether or not we're moving some of those Tier 2 things forward into Tier 1 or not.
That's correct. Right.
Okay, so there are things that we have talked about moving forward and we're set to approve. Actually, I think we have already approved moving forward, that we'll have to back out if we move forward.
I'm not sure of that.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Again, it's mighty close.
Okay.
But at this moment, I think, depending on what we hear on the 9th, that we might be able to do it all within the budget.
Well, we'll have more discussion about this if we move forward, because I have several other questions.
I think my point was that when we discussed this before, the water detention was in the budget.
Yes.
Yes.
The water detention has always been in the budget. We may have an opportunity to take it out of the budget. That's what we're hoping for.
Right, and then that gives us that room to go back to Tier 2 and look what we can accelerate.
Something else. Okay.
But
Any
you'll have numbers for us at the next
Right.
board meeting,
Yes.
right? So we
Yes.
can-
Right.
Our goal tonight was to have a public discussion about this as a possibility, because this had not been part of the plan previously. And it emerged because of the situation that we're in, that we may or may not control. And so then the question is there a better way or more effective way to spend the money available to the project if in fact we have to put in the stormwater detention?
Right.
Well, I'll state for the record, if it's a wash or close to a wash, doesn't have to be perfectly a wash, I'm perfectly open. I mean, I'm not making a commitment, but I'm saying I'm perfectly open.
Sure would like to hear more about it.
Take a look at it.
Yeah, I'd like to see the numbers and see what we get for each bundle, let's say, of money.
Is there more on this topic?
There is not, Mr. White.
So any final questions about the North High improvements?
Just a quick comment about, and this is related to the parking lot a little bit on the west side. I had shared with Dr. McDonald ahead of time an idea that I had that I think, just floating the idea right now, is the idea possibly of of introducing, as a component of the project, both at North and South, some sort of a Veterans Memorial, something that we could involve the students in heavily. And we've done so much with our Veterans Day programs. I think that the students would get excited about it. As well, it's an opportunity possibly to involve some of the local civic groups. It'd be a good community building sort of aspect, and when we look at some of the contention that we've experienced a little bit, lately with that parking lot north of, or west of Prince Street, this could be something that could help to enhance the aesthetic that's happening there too. And in fact, just briefly, I had a trip last week up to Minnesota and ended up observing almost a very similar situation to what we went through, or what we're going through right now, where they had to tear down a building, put in a parking lot, a lot of fear on the part of some of the neighbors about what that was going to look like, how it was going to affect the community, and they did a really nice job with the parking lot. It opened up some views very nicely and created a great aesthetic. And as well, they did a small Veterans Memorial there, and it was all done really tastefully, and so just wanted to float that idea out there as a possibility moving forward.
Good idea to think about, absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else on this topic? Okay, we move on to item 5, which is reception of visitor in the singular. Is there a visitor that wishes to address the board? Going once, going twice? Okay, the next item is our closed session, and this is to discuss collective negotiating matters between the district of employees or representatives as governed by 5 ILCS 120/2C2. The chair invites a motion to go into closed session for that purpose.
So moved.
Aye. Mrs. Beckman moves. Member Pettis seconds. I'll call the vote, please.
Julie Beckman.
Aye.
Jerry Kavisich.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Richard.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, that motion carries. We will be in closed session once we clear the room and get the tape recorder set up and everything else. Thank you. This will be the last public item. There will be no more public items this evening other than adjournment.